You're listening to a Roddenberry Podcast.
Don't touch that dial. We'll be right back. We'll have more news this evening, but first...
The latest Gene-ology, a Roddenberry Podcast.
Episode 77, Madame Faro. Welcome to Mission Log Gene-ology. I'm Ashley Thomas.
And I'm Earl Green. Each week on Gene-ology, we shuffle the whole deck into Roddenberry archives and pick a single story out of Gene Roddenberry's early TV writing, whether it was a Western, a cop show, or something else.
And each week, we examine what we pick out for the kinds of morals, meanings, and messages that we associate with Gene's most famous later work, Star Trek. And by the luck of the draw, we're back in the world of the 1958 Western Jefferson Drum, chronicling the adventures of an uncompromising newspaper editor in the Old West.
Well, that's news to me. Before we get to trivia on this week's episode, let me take a brief moment to encourage you to join our Patreon or follow us on YouTube or leave a review wherever you are listening to us. Patreon is your gateway to all things Mission Log, including exclusive access to the unedited version of our show and regular Mission Log. You get that too. Our private Discord where you can interact with us, your hosts, during scheduled live chats, along with occasional screenings. You can access all of this for just $1 a month. So head over to patreon.com/missionlog to see what tier works for you and join the conversation.
By the way, reviews really do help our shows far more than you can possibly imagine. Even if you can't come up with words for a written review, one of those 5-star ratings really does go a long way to tell the algorithm that we are worthy of being in the headlines and that other people might think that we're newsworthy too. We are counting on our loyal genealogists to help us spread the word. And now, this week's trivia. Earl, what is all the trivia fit to print this week?
Oh, there is quite a bit. Even I was surprised researching this. Madame Faro is Gene's second script for the first season of the Western series Jefferson Drum, and sadly, very few episodes of this show appear to be available to the public, so we are operating entirely from Gene's final draft script dated April 4th, 1958, with some bright yellow revised pages dated April 9th, 1958. Just goes to show that you can call something the final draft all you like, but the real final draft is what winds up going out to the public. From what information we've been able to track down, this was the 7th episode of the series to air. Jefferson Drum had a small, regular ensemble of 4 characters, and since the character of little Joey Drum, Jefferson's son, gets a larger role in this story, it's only fitting that we mention Eugene Mazzola, who was 9 years old at the time the first season was filmed. The son of 2 performers in their own right, Mazzola was born into a showbiz family with its roots in vaudeville. Eugene got his first movie role at the age of 2, but his most high-profile movie role would have to wait until he was 8, when he played Ramesses' son in The 10 Commandments. Hey kid, Yul Brynner's going to be your dad in this movie. Bring your A-game, no press. By the time Eugene appeared in Jefferson Drum, he was being credited on screen as Eugene Martin. Around the same time as he began his regular role in this show, he had already appeared in The Loretta Young Show, The Frank Sinatra Show, The Sheriff of Cochise, and Goodyear Theater. He would go on to appear in The Detectives, Highway Patrol, Wagon Train, World of Giants, and many other shows, but it was during the 70s that Eugene began transitioning to more behind-the-scenes work. He was a unit production manager on the Hardy Boys and Nancy Drew Mysteries, Twin Peaks, and he was a co-producer or producer on Butcher Baker Nightmare Maker, Class of 1999, and was most recently the executive producer of the 2017 film The Veil. This is one of these very rare cases where, as far as I'm able to tell, Eugene is a cast member of one of these shows who is still with us. In our main guest stars this week, we have a very solid Star Trek connection. The part of Kathy, Madame Faro herself, is played by none other than Karen Steele, who we will see in the memorable role of Eve in the first season Star Trek episode Mudd's Women in 1966. Karen's film and TV career started and continued to run in parallel with roles on the big screen in movies like Marty, The Shark Fighters, and Decision at Sundown, and numerous TV appearances in such shows as Medic, starring Richard Paladin Boone, Maverick, The Alaskans, 77 Sunset Strip, Perry Mason, Get Smart, and Flipper. The same year that Karen appeared in Star Trek, she also starred in a sci-fi movie called Cyborg 2087. She retired from acting in favor of her family life in the early 70s, and we lost Karen Steele in 1988. As the short-fused, card-sharp Tanner, veteran character actor Rick Vallon brought his lanky physique and piercing eyes to the Faro table. Acting since the 1930s, Rick never really achieved stardom, but he was a reliable piece of casting for any film or TV show that needed a menacing heavy in the room. With film appearances in Dangerous Money, The Panther's Claw, and Bullwhip, Rick also put in a lot of time on the small screen, appearing no fewer than 4 times in the George Reeves Adventures of Superman series, twice in Have Gun Will Travel, as well as The Lone Ranger, The Roy Rogers Show, and Bat Masterson. We're catching Rick in the run-up to the end of his screen career. He called it a day in the late 60s, and we lost Rick Vallon in 1977. By the way, we have run across the card game called Faro in a previous Gene script for the Hotel de Paris episode Sundance and the Black Widow, where Sundance spent a wild weekend playing Faro and apparently won himself a wife. For more details on the history and evolution of the game itself, I will refer you back to episode 56 of this podcast, though it's worth noting that Madame Faro seems to be playing good old poker in this story. But whatever the game, the stakes could be high. In the case of this episode of Jefferson Drum, very high indeed.
$100.
Worth a raise?
100's a lot of money. Maybe you better look at him.
Maybe your face tells me more.
You calling or not?
I'm raising. Make it 300.
Better have that look. The bet's 500.
I'll have a look at yours. Roll them over.
All hearts. Ace high.
Well now, looks like I've got a full house. We can talk while you see me to my buggy. I want to make Copper Flats tonight.
Sit down. You're into me over 900.
Ain't nothing wrong with her leaving. She's played all day.
Shut up. I said sit down.
I wouldn't talk to the lady like that.
What lady?
Hold it, Jack. Now, button your coat and get out.
No hard feelings. Maybe I'll have better luck next time.
You didn't have to hit him. He was right. I'm no lady. I'm a gambler.
Jefferson Drum, newspaperman with a passion for truth-telling and honest journalism, sets up shop in a small western town. Jefferson is a widower with a young son, and his commitment to the truth and justice brings him his fair share of adventures in the Wild West. Prologue. In Drum's newspaper office, Drum and Lucius Coyne are busily printing tomorrow's edition of the paper. Young Joey is cleaning some of the type, and he's been at it for a while, struggling to stay awake to finish the job. A misprint darkens Jeff's mood. Well, even darker than it's been all day, as Lucius points out. Jeff doesn't even argue the point. Yeah, he's been in a mood. He notices that Joey has fallen asleep and picks up the boy to carry him to bed. Lucius wipes the sweat from his face and wonders aloud, "Gets this hot in May. What'll it be come June?" Jeff's concerned about more than the weather. Will this dusty little town ever grow up and become something? Will the newspaper ever amount to anything? And what kind of life is any of the above going to give Joey? As always, Lucius seems to know what's up. It's the time of year the buck deer start pawing the ground. That's all what's wrong with you. Jeff isn't amused, but Lucius keeps going. Young feller's blood gets all thick in the spring, makes him jumpy, and he don't understand why. Furthermore, Lucius pinpoints the exact moment Jeff's mood turned sour, the moment he saw a high-rolling lady gambler roll into town. Jeff brushes this off. Heck, she's not even that much to look at. He tells Lucius, listen, I wouldn't even walk across the street to see her. Lucius snaps back, no, of course not. You might walk across the street to go get yourself a beer. Act 1. Big Ed's saloon is still open, but Jefferson can't even order a beer at the bar without getting unsolicited editorial advice. Why isn't he doing a story about Madame Faro? Big Ed points her out to him. Now looky here, Jeff, right over here. Most famous lady gambler in the country. Hits town, starts the biggest game my place has ever seen. And, of course, Big Ed would like to mention that this spectacle is playing out at his watering hole. That certainly wouldn't hurt business. But no, Jeff has to print editorials about the lack of a schoolhouse. Jeff finally makes his way through the crowd to watch Madame Faro at work in a high-stakes poker game against Hickey and a man named Tanner. She's calling somebody's bluff and raising the pot by $200. Also, Jeff is standing in her light. Hickey tries to introduce Madame Faro to Jeff as the local newspaper man, but she interrupts him. You here to talk or play cards? To Jeff. And then to Tanner. 200. You calling or not? Tanner pauses for a moment, but yeah, he's in. A call he instantly regrets when Madame Faro reveals she's got 3 kings in her hand. The pot is hers. So is all of Jeff's attention, which she notices, asking him, something on your mind? Hickey takes the opportunity to complete the introduction he was trying to facilitate earlier, but the lady is shuffling the deck for the next game. Tanner is impatient for the next hand of poker, but Madame Faro takes a moment to ask Jeff, you want to do a story on me? Is that it? I can cuss, ride, and shoot as good as any man here, and out-gamble all of them. Jeff's reply is, out here we got 1,000 men to every woman. You'd make more news if you wore lace and ribbons. The look on her face makes it clear that this was a lead that should have stayed buried. But before she can say anything, Tanner snarls, deal. As the players pick up their hands, she turns to Jeff and says, I'll be honest, too. The bigger a gambler's reputation, the bigger the games. I'd like a story. Hickey nopes out of this hand very quickly. His cards are not going to do him any favors. Other players fold in rapid succession, too. It's once again down to Madame Faro and Tanner. Over her shoulder, Jeff sees she's playing with a full house, aces over deuces. Madame Faro glances at him and says, I've got a feeling you'll bring me luck. Tanner's getting impatient with his opponent playing a whole different game with Jeff, while she's also playing poker. The pot grows to 500. She calls Tanner's bluff and once again beats him. While she's scooping her winnings into an old carpet bag, she tells Jeff they can talk on the way to her buggy. She's leaving tonight for Copper Flats. Tanner's not having it. Sit down. You're into me over 900. Hickey cheerfully points out that the winner can leave any time she likes. Tanner tells Hickey to shut up and tells Madame Faro in no uncertain terms to sit back down at the table. Jeff says, I wouldn't talk to the lady like that, to which Tanner replies, what lady? At that, Jeff reaches across the table and backhands Tanner. Tanner goes for a gun, but Madame Faro sharply warns him off, with her own derringer in hand. Still wearing her best poker face, she tells Tanner to keep his hand off his gun and get out. When he doesn't comply, she cocks the hammer of her gun. Seething, he says something about having better luck next time and gets up from the table. When Tanner's out of earshot, she tells Jeff, you didn't have to hit him. He was right. I'm no lady. I'm a gambler. She then buys everybody a round of drinks. Sorry about the fuss. Shortly afterward, Jeff is walking her from Big Ed's, and they both detect a breeze, the first one in quite a while. Madame Faro says, like I said, Mr. Drum, you bring me luck. Since it's so nice, Jeff says, let's take a stroll. Her response is quick. I asked for a news story. If I meant anything else, I'd say it. Jeff says, I suggested a stroll. If I meant anything else, I'd say it. Well, okay then. She lets down her defenses a little bit and tells him about her life. She travels alone from town to town. Sometimes she sleeps in mining camps along the way. The places she goes haven't seen a woman in months. Ribbons and lace would cause more problems for her. But she doesn't have to depend on anyone other than herself. That suits her just fine. But Jeff chuckles because she says it like she's angry about it, and he doesn't know why they've been at odds. Madame Faro says, come to think of it, she's been on edge all week. Well, Jeff knows what that's like. But before this conversation can become a formal interview, or anything else, he spots something in the dark and pulls her to the ground hard just as a gunshot rings out. The shot misses Madame Faro but catches Jeff a glancing blow in the shoulder. People pour out of Big Ed's and Madame Faro calls for help. Hickey and Ed help lift Jeff to his feet and take him back to the newspaper office. Act 2. Daytime. Jeff wakes up in a back room of the newspaper office under the care of Madame Faro. Lucius and Joey are there too. Jeff has been unconscious for almost 2 days due to some serious blood loss. His immediate concern is, what about the paper? But it turns out that Lucius and Joey, with Madame Faro's help, has been keeping the newspaper on schedule. As she says, she pays off her debts, and Jeff saved her life. So, to hear Joey tell it, she's been hanging around the office, cleaning the place up and organizing it. Gave Jeff a sponge bath. Oh, and her name is Kathy, and hey, that's enough out of you, kid. She tells Joey and Lucius to scram and let Jeff rest. She's sticking around for a few more days to make sure Jeff's okay, but she also has to make up for lost time and lost money, so she'll be playing again tonight at Big Ed's. Truth be told, this town cramps her style something fierce. If she even so much as ventures into the general store, everyone stares. While Jeff is resting, Joey keeps plying Kathy with questions, especially after she hands him some sugar candy. She's still irritable with Joey, though, and he asks if he did something wrong. Of course he didn't, she says. I'm just jumpy. Too long in one place, I guess. But Joey said Lucius said that's not it. Oh? Well, what did Lucius say? Joey says, he says it's 'cause you want to be a woman and you're afraid to. He's always joking. Kathy growls, you could drive a teeming wagon through that man's mouth. She also laments that at Joey's age, he should have, a friend somewhere in this town. He just snuggles up to her and says, we're friends, aren't we? Aww. But the saccharine hug fest is interrupted when Hickey stops by the office. Kathy hands Joey a deck of cards and tells him to go learn how to play solitaire or, something until someone invents Windows 3.0. Hickey doesn't have much to say. It almost sounds like he's trying to talk Jeff Drum up as a reason for Kathy to stay in town. Thank you, Mr. Hickey. That'll be all. Kathy shows him to the door. When she comes back in, Jeff is up and about and working, which she says he shouldn't be. If he wants to get up and about, what about a buggy drive? Jeff protests that he can't drive with one arm, but Kathy says she can drive a buggy just fine, thank you, and Jeff suggests making a picnic of it tomorrow morning. Well, she just got volunteered to make lunch, which she's already been doing. First, she says, she'll need to visit Hickey's store again. The next day, picnic time. They've picked a pleasant spot out of town, and Kathy has indeed packed lunch. Jeff, with his arm in a sling, is still super alert about their surroundings. He's also super alert about the fact that Kathy is in a whole new set of clothes, unlike anything he's seen her wearing before. She lets her guard down and tells more of her story. She inherited her nickname and her life as a gambler from her dad, Big Jim Faro, who died when she was 17. She's been on her own since then. It hasn't been an easy life, but it's been a better one than some offers she's gotten. So, a gambler she is. That brings Jeff to something he's been worried about. She's cleared over $1,000 playing poker at Big Ed's. Somebody is not happy about it. Not happy enough to have tried to kill her. And even setting that aside, people are talking. Rumors are starting. Kathy is once again Madame Faro when she says, I deal a hands-on table game. No one's ever caught Madame Faro cheating. Still, Jeff asks, maybe she should be less of a presence at Big Ed's for her own safety? Exasperated, Kathy asks, Jeff, do we have to talk about gambling out here? Staying in one place and kind of becoming an extra member of Jeff's unconventional little family has made her realize there might be a life beyond Madame Faro's run at the poker table. Wouldn't Jeff like a newer printing press? Wouldn't he like to be able to send Joey to a good school? She might be able to help provide those things if she sticks around. Now there's definitely romance in the air. The conversation stops short. Neither one of them are used to talking about long-term plans like that. Maybe it's time to pack up the picnic lunch. That night at the newspaper office, business as usual for Jeff, Lucius, and Joey, but Lucius notices a change immediately. He thinks Jeff's been bitten by the love bug. Probably snuck up on him during the picnic. Joey offers to tell Jeff's fortune with the deck of cards Kathy gave him, and Jeff is impressed until he looks at the deck and realizes it's a deck of shaved cards. It's easy to pick out the aces. Bedtime, Joey, now. Right about then, Big Ed shows up from across the street. Jeff, there's trouble at my place. Some of the boys figure Madame Faro's been cheating. Jeff grumbles. 2 minutes ago, that would have been news. Big Ed seems to expect that Jeff will follow him back to the tavern to defend Kathy's honor, but Jeff just says to let him know how it turns out. This changes everything. But Lucius reveals that Kathy's been asking him what Jeff needs to succeed, and how much it'll cost. Jeff recoils in disbelief. I don't lie, Jeff, Lucius says. You know that. If you can't tell when a girl's in love with someone, you're a bad newspaperman. Jeff grabs his gun, puts it in his waistband, and hurries out of the room. At Big Ed's saloon, things have gotten ugly. Madame Faro is trying to gather up her winnings and call it a night, but Tanner says, you move and I'll kill you, woman or not. I say she cheated. I saw it. No one wins every night, not by accident. Jeff dashes into the saloon, hand on his gun, and she warns him, keep out of it, Jeff. Tanner continues for the crowd's benefit. He's in this too. You've seen them together. Too bad my shot didn't... Oops. Well, now we know who shot Jeff. The two men draw down on each other, but neither one of them fires. The one shot that rings out is from Madame Faro's Derringer. Game over for Tanner. Madame Faro asks Hickey to turn Tanner over and search his coat, and it turns out Tanner was the cheat. But Jeff, ever the intrepid reporter, picks up Madame Faro's cards from the table and finds that she wasn't cheating, but she could have. It's clear that Jeff was expecting to find something else. Then she picks up the deck and is able to pick out any card she wants, but only against a cheat like Tanner. She promises everyone else got an honest deal. This town's gotten too hot for her, however. It's time for Madame Faro to seek her fortune elsewhere. The end.
Earl, thank you for dealing out that recap. I feel like the deck was really stacked in our favor.
I feel like I showed my hand really early that this was another one I enjoyed quite a bit.
Didn't have to cut the cards too many times. You were not dealing from the bottom of the deck. This was a really great recap, and I'm thinking of more and more poker funds. But did I just say poker funds? I just said poker funds, poker puns. But I don't know that anyone else really wants to hear them.
Well, hey, I'm not going to keep chip on my shoulder about that.
You want to bet?
No, I usually don't.
It's okay. I don't have a good poker face.
I don't bet on a podcaster salary, I'll put it that way.
So, Earl, this was a really interesting script. You and I think, as I was reading through, I was like, oh my gosh. I feel like stop me if you've heard this one before, but, it's been... just a little more than a year since I joined the Gene-ology crew, and what was my very first script? Ella West.
Yes.
And man, I need to go back and check the dates. Like, we don't know exactly when Ella West script was written, but it aired in 1959?
It aired in January of 1958, so about half a year before this.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So, I was like, was Gene, going back to the well, needed to bust out this script a little quicker than, some of his other ones? I don't know. Definitely got shades of Ella West in this one. And, I saw some things that made me think of, The Affair with Browning's Woman from Wrangler, which would come in later.
I picked up on that, too, because we are not even out of the opening tease. We're not even to the opening titles.
Mm-hmm.
And we're already getting hit with a dose of In the Spring, a young man's fancy lightly turns to thoughts of love. Or
yeah.
my favorite variation of that was when they had Hank Williams Jr. do a Monday Night Football intro. One time, I think this was in the 90s, was like, in the spring, a young man's fancy lightly turns to thoughts of some football. Yeah, that was definitely, everyone feeling like they need to sow their wild oats. That was a very prominent theme in The Affair with Browning's Woman. And that's a show that's not going to happen until 2 years after where we are right now.
Yeah, but I mean, it's almost word for word
Yeah.
some of the same dialogue that would make it into The Affair with Browning's Woman a couple years later. And, the difference being, Sam being like, hey, lady horses, to the fillies, the wild fillies running by. It's Lucius saying something about, oh, it's the time of the year where the bucks stamp and stomp. I'm like, what you trying to say, bro?
Yeah, it's saying, your blood's getting thick. It's like, oh no, I need to go see a doctor about that one. Although apparently this town does not have one, since the solution to Jefferson Drum taking a gunshot to the shoulder is, let's go let him rest in the newspaper office for a couple of days.
Yeah, have him we'll patch him up and let him sleep it off.
Yeah, well, I'm glad that had to be just a scrape then, because I can't imagine it going well if it was any more than that. Total detour here, that line about a young man's fancy in the spring. That line is from Tennyson's poem Locksley Hall, which just a couple of stanzas earlier gives us, when I dipped into the future, far as human eye could see, saw the vision of the world and all the wonder that could be, which you can find quoted on the dedication plaque of a certain starship, USS Voyager. Has absolutely nothing to do with this script, but, I couldn't double-check Locksley Hall without pointing that out.
I have never bothered to look up where that expression came from, and didn't even realize there was a Star Trek connection. So, good job, Earl. This is why you are the trivia guru.
Sci-fi shows in the 90s, all the good ones, quote Tennyson. I thought it was really interesting that Karen Steele, Eve from Mud's Women, was Madame Faro, because in my mind's eye, and maybe this is because of the similarities that you already noted, I was kind of picturing Norma Crane.
Yeah, someone who is a little more rough around the edges, and I'm not trying to slight Norma Crane in any way, because Norma Crane was a beautiful woman, but someone who doesn't, her IMDb picture isn't like, Marilyn Monroe copycat. I didn't have. I'm really glad that I read the script without looking at IMDb first, because that just made the the shock of who is playing her all that greater.
That being said, it would be great if this would turn up somewhere on the internet where we could watch it, because having said that, I would like to see Karen Steele do this.
Yes.
And see her get something with more range than Mud's Women. Although, as Eve, she did get some licks in toward the end of that episode.
Mm.
And so I can't not see it. I wish we could see it.
Right. This was an interesting one. And maybe it was because it was a little more fresh in my mind, because I went back and listened to Ella West somewhat recently after you mentioned, hey, it's been a year since you've been on Gene-ology. I was like, oh, I suppose it has, hasn't it? And so it was fun to go back and listen to my first episode, and I was like, oh, Earl maybe sounds so smart. But thinking about how Ella was described in that episode versus this, and I feel like some of the ways that she's described in the script, because some of it is set direction, it's not anything that's said in the dialogue.
Yeah,
it's a little crueler, I think, in some way. I made a list, and I think I got most of the descriptors that were in the set direction or things said about her, but she's basically described as a woman. Oh, you would be pretty if, or you would be prettier if. And she's described as swaggering like a man. She's 28 with a face that could be pretty with some attention. She is rocking a visor, a messy bun. That is the technical term for, hair put up untidily. That is called a messy bun. That is the technical term used there. She is wearing a skirt. That surprised me when they talk about her swaggering like a man. I was not imagining her wearing a skirt. But wearing a skirt and a buckskin jacket, that are, kind of unkempt and give her a severe look. Her expression and pose mimic masculinity is one of the set directions. Jeff says to her, you would make more news if you wore lace and ribbons because there are so few women in this town. Like, oh, okay. Lucius says of her, you want to be a woman, but you're afraid to. He says this in front of Joey.
Inappropriate.
And then, when Joey says, or when she asks Joey, well, what does your dad say about me? He's grateful you don't swagger like a man, even though it says her swagger is like a man's swagger in the set direction. It's on page 27 of the script. She's all dressed up. Camera trucks angling to include Madame Faro in the shot, and we can understand Jeff's interest. The masculine gestures and pose are gone, and she sits prettily on the grass in a starched, fresh new dress. It's frilly, very feminine, with lace and ribbons. A touch of makeup and a comb to the hair has brought out a softness we haven't seen before, and the tight, calculating gambler's look has been replaced by an almost frightened, anxious-to-please unsureness. I'm like, oh, wait, yes, we now recognize you are a woman because you are dressed very femininely, or in a very feminine manner. But then Jeff says to her, like, basically trying to convince her to stay. I like you, Joey likes you, you look pretty in that dress. That's literally the third thing out of his mouth. Not just, I like you, my kid likes you, oh, and you look pretty in that dress. So obviously we're going to have to keep that.
Yeah, oh. And Joey has, there are two lines of Joey's that are not very far apart that really brought me up short. Mm-hmm. It made me think, okay, Joey, now slow down, son.
Slow your roll.
Yeah, because there's a lot of mileage between, I bet my mom was like you, and I wish you were my mom. And Joey just covered that mileage in about 2.7 seconds.
I'm like,
it's like, whoa.
Oh, that is a kid with reactive detachment disorder. Or, trauma response of some kind to him losing his mother, and therefore he gravitates to any new lady figure that enters his life,
I am glad to see that Kathy is sticking to the old rule governing the behavior of aunts and uncles where kids are concerned, which is sugar them up, send them home to mom or dad. It's their problem now.
Yep. That's what
sugar
I do.
Candy.
We take my niece and nephew really love to go to the movies, and we love to go to the movies too. So we take them to the movies and let's get ices. We're going to get candy. We're going to get popcorn. We pass it all back and forth and then take them back to my sister. Here you go.
Yep.
Yep.
This is a you problem now. I do like that when Jeff and Kathy are strolling down the street, there is some absolute candor going on here because we established that nobody is expecting romance to bloom. It's just two people talking.
Yeah.
It's just, she's like, I'm not looking for anything from you. And he's like, well, that's good. I wasn't looking for anything from you.
Hey, it's good. Let's, kind of what we're led to believe because of the nature of the TV show. Like, oh, yeah, right. But, at this point, they don't know that they're looking for something. They're just like, hey, we're two people talking. And that's it.
Putting their metaphorical cards on the table. Speaking of which, Jeff backhanding Tanner, backhanding him? Wow, it's like, I'm not even going to punch you. You're not worth a punch. I'm just going to slap you. It's like, Jeff, just take your gloves off, slap the other guy's face with him, and challenge him to a duel, why don't you? I have 4 words written in my notes. I have no idea what frame of mind I was in when I wrote this down. Sponge bath, square pants.
Yeah, that line, and she even gave you a bath. Oh my. Uh-huh. Jefferson's like, excuse me? You did what?
Yeah, and of course at that point he's like, Joey, go to bed. It's like that's half of his interaction with Joey in this episode is go to bed.
It's time for you to go to your room.
Now, in the second act, we got this love fest going between Kathy and Joey. Hickey interrupting that, it just felt weird because he doesn't really say anything of great importance. It's like he's trying to talk Jeff up to her, like he is trying to get her to stay. But then I realized, okay, the actual point of that scene, it doesn't really matter what Hickey says. It's there to make sure that she hands her cards off to Joey.
Right.
Because that becomes important later. And so it's like, okay, so it doesn't really matter what he says. Hickey had nothing important to say there, and he proceeded to say nothing important.
Right.
I can't help but notice Nora doesn't seem to be working at Big Ed's anymore. So,
yeah.
Did she get out of town?
Maybe she was off that night. I don't know.
Actually, according to IMDb, which I'm guessing all of IMDb's records from this show come from TV guide listings. Because I don't know if the people who made those entries in IMDb have seen any of this. Help a brother out. But according to IMDb, it says that the actress who played Nora in Law and Order made only the one appearance. So maybe she did get to leave town as she wanted to, and good for her.
Yeah. No.
It's starting to sound like this town is, like the town I grew up in. It's got a gravity well to it.
Yeah. It's something. It's something. It doesn't, there's a reason maybe there's not that many women out there besides, that was the, demographic for the Wild West. It was mostly men. So there's that. But if I were a lady and I found myself in that town, I might not be convinced to stay either because it doesn't seem like a safe place for me to be.
Yeah, there seems to be plenty of stuff to keep a newspaper humming.
Yeah.
For such a small town.
I think Kathy has run into that quite a bit. She says, and again, this is paraphrasing Ella West. Almost verbatim. I can cuss, ride, and shoot as good as any man here and outgamble all of them. That is how she describes herself. I mean, which is not entirely unlike how Ella West says, I can take all of you. I'm worth 6 men and 10 women, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just think it's very interesting. Obviously, she's been through some stuff.
Sure.
That is beyond the scope of what this half hour of TV could cover. And she's armed for one thing. I think that's a big tell.
Yeah.
And the buckskin jacket that doesn't seem to suit her. In my head, she won that off some guy's back.
That's a good shout there. I hadn't thought about that.
And so, I'm all for her outfitting herself however she has to, because she was still what we consider a minor.
Yeah.
At the time that she found herself on her own, which that strikes a big chord with me. And so, yeah, I totally understand. You're scrounging for whatever you can.
Yeah.
At that point.
Yeah. Another thing of note she says about herself. She says, I like taking care of myself, depending upon no one but myself. And if I've got to be half man to keep it up, that suits me just fine too. She says that in that first conversation she and Jeff have when they're walking that evening after the poker match. So I pity her because, that's the point where we find out, how'd she get the name Madame Faro? Well, my dad was, what was it, Joe Faro or something?
Big Jim Faro, which, made me, unfortunately, put me in mind of Kentucky Fried Movie and Big Jim Slade.
Love it. So, yeah, she came by the name, honestly, but she's had to take care of herself since she was 17. She didn't have anybody else. And, well, she knows how to play cards, and she's dang good at it. Why not?
It's a transferable skill.
Well, and she says, compared to some offers I got, it was a pretty decent life. So
Yeah, that's a very loaded line right there.
yeah, I'm like, ooh, what kind of offers did you get? Ooh.
Yeah, and I have a feeling they were probably not presented to her as offers.
No, I have a feeling like that as well. So
I think she's had fire to that Derringer more than once in her life.
yeah.
Big thing I forgot to mention in trivia, we are missing the last page or two of the script. So if anyone feels like the recap ended kind of abruptly, sorry. However, it does kind of lay out the cards of what's going to happen. So all that we're really missing is whatever the button scene at the end is, because with Jefferson Drum, there was usually a tiny, tiny little third act. Same thing with Shannon, if I remember.
Mm.
And so the reality of a show like this, which was already in syndication and already needed to have the characters pretty much where we found them at the beginning of this or any other episode, it's easy to imagine how it played out. There was a set formula for this sort of thing.
Yeah.
As there was with a great deal of old school TV.
One other observation I've had, and we can maybe get into this a little more in discussion. She says that she has never so much as held a man's hand, and she feels comfortable telling Jeff that, which I think is probably telling of how she perceives Jeff as a person, like the kind of reputation he has for being a good and honorable sort of man. But, you know, there's a way to read that where it sounds like she's kind of offering herself to Jeff. But I think it's more of like, well, can you blame her?
Yeah.
She's had to keep up this really tough facade. If she let any man that is not completely 100% trustworthy in, you know, then that basically takes any power or agency that she has away from her.
Yeah, I do not think she was exaggerating or being figurative there. I think she was being 100% honest about that.
Yeah.
And I don't blame her.
I don't blame her for that at all. Like, she's had to make some difficult choices to take care and protect herself. So yeah, I don't think I'd do that either.
Yeah, like I said, I feel like the Derringer has gotten a workout, and that says a lot about the reality of that period in American history, especially for a woman out there on her own.
Yeah, truly. This was a better script than I thought it was going to be.
This one, it really took a turn because I had to read it more than once to get it. I remember the first time I read it about 5/6 of the way through. And I was like, okay, I've seen this show before.
Right.
It felt like the East Branch of Ella West.
Great.
And for context, again, this episode of Jefferson Drum aired June 6th, 1958. Ella West, the Have Gun Will Travel episode, premiered January 4th, 1958. And for a lot of the story, it just really has that same vibe. You have a woman who is making the decision to not be feminine because it would cause way too much trouble. And then all the guys around her are like, hey, girl, why can't you be more of a girl? Then we get to the end of the script and the whole thing about shaved cards. And then Tanner just being Tanner. Wasn't Tanner also the name of Sundance's bride-to-be? That was her ex-husband?
Yes, I think so. Something like that. I
just realized that, and, okay.
I had forgotten that until you mentioned it, but I think you're right.
So at the end of this one, there is a sting in the tail that I feel has huge relevance. even today, especially today, and I'll get into the especially in a little bit, it turns this into its own story. I think I like this better than Ella West.
Yeah, I do too.
When Kathy fesses up to Drum that she has to cheat at the game of poker because she has picked up that there's a man at the table who is already cheating himself. This is not about cards or games of chance anymore. It is about how much harder women or anyone who is not a white man has to work to achieve anything, even remotely approaching equity, in a world that is built to systematically prop up white men. Not that long ago, we reviewed a script Gene wrote for the Joan Crawford show called A Man's World. You could just as easily give that title to this script, because that's the world Kathy is having to operate in. And it has not been easy for her, and it has not been fun for her. She's not playing these games for fun.
Yeah.
She's playing them because they're the only alternative for her to having to settle down with someone who may be less than optimal for her. My one problem with this script is that we have to wait until the end of it for it to show its cards and differentiate itself from Ella West.
Right.
I wish this could have been foregrounded a lot sooner in the story, because until then, it feels like a repeat, and really, the first time I read it, I kind of checked out on it. I feel that this late twist in the story gives the episode a lot more bite and a lot more relevance than Ella West had a chance of having.
Yeah, agree. The twist, like, oh, she's cheating. I was like, oh man, like, it. Before we find out, no, she's not cheating. She's evening the odds in a game where a guy is cheating.
Yes.
She is putting him in his place.
Yeah.
Whereas everybody else is getting, clean game from her.
Yeah. And that is pointed out because Drum looks at the hand she was playing against Tanner, and it says the hand was garbage.
Yeah.
It was mincemeat as far as a hand of poker goes. On a more minor note, it would have been neat if Drum could have been Kathy's ally and advocate without there necessarily needing to be romantic sparks flying. But I will concede that fight because this was the playbook for this era of TV.
Sure.
If a woman showed up in a Western, she was there to be the romantic interest. Or, she was probably there for horrible things to happen to her, which would justify someone taking revenge.
Right, because men cannot act unless the woman they love is murdered. Or had something horrible happen to her.
Yeah, and that's not just a 50s thing. That will continue to be the pattern for TV storytelling for many, many years to come.
Well, it still is.
And still is to a large extent.
Yeah. But that being said, I really like Kathy.
Yeah.
I think she is really, really interesting. She is what Ella West should have been.
Yes.
Because instead of getting a story where the women watching it are told, well, you only have value if you are dressed a certain way or look a certain way or act a certain way. Here, we see a woman who has created her own value.
Yes.
She has her own agency. And yes, we do have a scene where she has chosen to dress in quote unquote more feminine attire because she likes Jefferson.
Can I home in on something from the stage directions of that scene with the picnic scene?
Please.
I would almost have preferred it if she hadn't bothered with makeup.
Yes.
I would like there to have been a hint that, she just almost doesn't know how to woman because she's been living this life so long.
Yeah. As someone who struggles with all of those stereotypical things, I have to, for want of better terminology, have somebody spell check my makeup or proofread. Did I do this right? I don't know if I did it right. Help. For the few times where I do get dressed up. It's a scene that, like, I bristled reading it. The masculine gestures and pose gone. She sits prettily on the grass in a starched, fresh new dress. It's frilly, very feminine with lace and ribbons. And I'm like, I hate wearing anything with lace and ribbons. I have always hated wearing anything with lace and ribbons. That does not make me any less of a woman because I do not enjoy those things.
I would almost have liked this to have been her doing her best approximation of feminine and not resorting to, oh, I am now conventionally feminine. Please love me.
Right. But I mean, because it's pretty clear from the script, like Jeff already thinks that she's attractive. She doesn't have to do this stuff.
Yeah. I don't think she would have to reach real far for him to be even more attracted. I kind of wish those stage directions for that scene were very different because this is, I don't think it's a case of, it's weak writing. It's the writing of the time. Me, through my lens of the 21st century, I would have chosen to do things a little bit differently there.
Yeah, no, same. As a heterosexual lady, I can't blame her for being really attracted to Jeff. Jeff Richards is a very handsome man. Jeff is the kind of man that's earned her trust. Not just because, one, he took a bullet for her. It's kind of a big deal. He's also not trying to get anything from her.
Yeah.
And he's not intimidated by her either, or emasculated by her in some way. One of the things that I really love about my husband is that he is not at all threatened or emasculated by any measure of success that I've had in my career or a chosen profession. And he celebrates me. He is my biggest fan. And I am so grateful for that, and I love that about him. He does not feel diminished by anything I have accomplished. And that is so attractive to me about him. And I see that same thing here, like with Jeff. Like, he's like, wow, that's really cool that you are doing this on your own, and you have taken care of yourself. You don't need anybody to take care of you.
I wonder if Jeff Richards' sheer attractiveness is what led to them casting the role of Kathy the way they did. It's like, okay, we have a very handsome dude. We have to match that.
Yeah.
However, thinking again back to Mudd's Women, if you think about that story at the end, toward the end of the story, when the Venus drug has run out, and Eve has this whole scene where she's like, oh, but you want me to cook and clean? She's not having this miner's crap who she has been promised to and she's been pimped out to by Mudd. The more I think about Mudd's Women, the more I think, oh no, she is the lady for this episode because I can see her doing it all. Now that I think about it, I can see her doing it all. It's just that they had to cast someone who would, be on Jeff Richards' level.
Yeah. It's like, this guy's a 10. We need a 10.
Actually, I feel like the game has come to an end. Everyone's cards are on the table. At least they are now that we've gone through the whole script. It's kind of funny. The first time I read this, I wasn't really into it. I was like, "Oh, we're phoning it in," and now it's like, "Oh no, this is the better script." Now I wish we had the last couple of pages.
Yeah. It's too bad that we don't get to see how Gene put a cap on this. When I finished reading the first time, I thought like, "Oh, that just kind of ended abruptly." But then I thought about the previous episode that just ended kind of. We're gonna go have a drink at the bar because, it's been a day.
They'd probably just use that scene at the end of every episode of Jefferson Drum.
Jeff goes to get a beer with Big Ed. Can't blame him. So
there's not a whole lot to do in that town.
No, this is Your one-stop shop for entertainment.
Yeah. Yeah, it's either that or the general store and Undertaker.
Yes. I ended up liking this a lot more than I thought I would, based on, the first bit of the script. I was like, we're just getting, dehydrated, reconstituted Ella West with a splash of the affair with Browning's woman, which has not yet happened.
If we had read this script, if we had covered this before Have Gun Will Travel, I think we would probably have given it more of a fair shake. But still, there's kind of mixed messaging up until the last minute.
Yeah. Yeah, I think what you said earlier about, man, I wish we had gotten a little more exposition about Kathy beforehand, before this last, 2 minutes of the episode.
Yeah, it would have been a huge improvement. Overall, though, I am happy to report that Sneaky Gene is in the room again. Like you, I felt like I was being served reheated Ella West leftovers, and I do still think that there is some validity to that criticism, but the back third of the second act takes things in such a different direction, and a message that speaks to us even now. And unfortunately, we are returning to a world where you could film the script without changing much and it has the same meaning. So here's a Western from the 1950s that seems to be something of an evergreen.
Yeah. And, you pointed out something that I didn't even consider when I was reading the episode, talking about how it's not that she is cheating, it's that she is using that shaved deck of cards to put herself on even footing with the guy who is cheating.
Yes.
It's not that she is cheating at all costs. She is cheating to stop him, like to even the odds, to level the playing field. And boy, that is a metaphor. It's not just a plot device. It's not just her enacting some form of justice without shooting him, or
it's a solid metaphor.
Yeah. I did not even think about that until you mentioned it, and I am flabbergasted I didn't think about that until you mentioned it. So, good job. Thank you for pointing that out, because I think that's a worthy discussion that is sadly still relevant. This random bits of one-offs and a handful of scripts that Gene contributed to these Screen Gem shows, they've got deeper meaning and more legs than I thought they would.
I want to point out again, we have a script Gene wrote in 1958 that is calling out the gap that exists between where women's rights were, where they are, and where there could still be. In 1958, it registered with him that there was a long, long way to go before you could even start to call it equality.
Yep.
And he found a way to slip that message into this show, like he was sneaking his own extra card into the deck, to highlight that issue in 1958. So this is a prime slice of Gene Roddenberry here.
Yeah.
But it's highlighting an issue where there is sadly still a long way to go in 2025.
Yeah, it's, I just did the math on that, Earl. That is 67 years ago at time of recording. 67 years ago, and sadly, this is still relevant.
I wish I had Gene's optimism for human progress at this point. It's hard to have in 2025.
Yeah. I'm going to choose to remain optimistic because I gotta be, to keep my sanity. But also, I think what we're seeing is the last gasp of a society where these things are allowed to persist.
Have you ever heard of what in child psychology is called an extinction burst?
I have not. Please elaborate.
Okay, and this is sort of the thing that they're talking about with the terrible twos or the terrible threes or whatever. There's behavior that you keep correcting, and yet it keeps coming back with more and more force. Like, oh no, now I'm going to behave even worse. Mm-hmm. But what it is they're getting it out of their system before they do finally correct. That's the extinction burst. Mm-hmm. It's the extinction of that bad behavior before they figure out, this is not getting me anywhere. And yes, even a 2 or 3 or 4-year-old can figure that out. Oh, this behavior is causing me more problems than it is benefiting me. But up until that realization sinks in, that's the extinction burst. Mm-hmm. I want to believe that is where we are now. I just want the extinction burst to not be an extinction level event, please.
Yes. Can we not have that part of the extinction?
Special thanks to the Roddenberry Repertory players. Our cast this week featured Brandon Berman as Jefferson Drum, Rhea Papagiorgio as Madame Faro, Sean McDaniel as Tanner, and Larry Nemechek as Hickey. Gene-ology is meant to be entertaining and informative, but it's also just the beginning of an ongoing conversation about the works of Gene Roddenberry. Drop us a line at missionlog@roddenberry.com and join us on Facebook at missionlogpod. And please remember, your comments could be used in future installments of Gene-ology. If you have any material that might be of interest to us that isn't already in the Roddenberry archive, drop us a line at missionlog@roddenberry.com. Our website is missionlogpodcast.com, and Mission Log Gene-ology is produced by Roddenberry Entertainment.
On the next Gene-ology, the poet. Special thanks to consulting producers Matt Esposito, Homer Frizzell, Rand Hurl, Tom Kozak, Julie Miller, Mike Richards, Mike Schabel, Paul Shadwell, and David Takechi.
Back next week with more of your favorite programs. This concludes our broadcast day.
This is a Roddenberry podcast. For more great podcasts, visit podcast.roddenberry.com.